What's up, guys, and thank you again for watching another episode of Footballer's Advice. In today's video, I'm going to go over how you can find cheap flights to Europe. So whether it be that you have a trial set up and you need to get over to Europe, or you're going on a European showcase with one of these third-party soccer placement companies, or even if you're going to do something like I did and go overseas and just knock on doors to try out with teams, I'm going to show you in this video how you can find a flight for cheap and save you some money. Make sure to also watch this entire video, as towards the end I'm going to give you guys a really good tip and trick that I think a lot of people just don't know about, and it actually was able to give me 50% off my flight to Europe. So like I said, definitely check out all of the video, that way you can get that tip. Now there are a couple different ways that you can use in order to find a cheap flight to Europe, and I will explain all of that in this video. But just to mention to you guys, the order in which I go about discussing each idea is not in any specific order, so just remember that. So the first way that you can find a cheap flight to Europe is actually by using a budget airline. The advantage of using a budget airline compared to your traditional airline is the fact that they do offer cheaper tickets to fly. But with this advantage, there also is several disadvantages with using a budget airline. One of those disadvantages is that there are a lot of hidden fees that you might have to pay. One of these fees will be checking your bag. If you need to put your bag underneath the plane, usually you will have to pay for this, and sometimes these fees can be really high. Another one of these fees also is any refreshments that you may want during your flight. Unlike traditional airlines where they offer that, or that cost is actually incorporated into the price of the ticket, with budget airlines, that cost is completely separate. So for any drinks or refreshments that you may need, you will have to pay that as well. Another disadvantage to budget airlines is the fact that they don't fly to every destination that traditional airline carriers do. So this is something that you're going to have to factor in if you need to have a connecting flight and or any other transportation that allows you to get to your destination. This is also why it's very important for you to do all of your research beforehand and in advance. That way you can plan for any additional costs that you may incur while you fly and or any other things that you need to do to get to your destination. So like I said, remember to add all of those additional fees that you may be paying or other transportation costs into the price of the ticket. Sometimes using a budget airline isn't the cheapest, and using a traditional airline where you don't have to pay any of those fees or be concerned with taking a connecting flight to get to the destination that you need to get to. Now, the budget airlines that I know about that a lot of travelers use and that I've heard other soccer players use is Norwegian Air and WOW Air. Now, there are a couple other budget airlines out there, however, these are the two most common ones that I talk to other soccer players about and other travelers about when they go over to Europe. The second way that you can find a cheap flight to Europe is to actually use an airline search engine website that allows you to compare the different price of tickets for each airline. Airline search engine websites allow travelers to compare the price of each ticket for each airline. So that way, by inputting the information, they get to see not only the price of the ticket, but the travel itinerary for each airline. That way, travelers can choose their best option. And with a lot of these airline search engine websites, you may also find that they offer cheaper tickets to fly than going to the traditional airline's website. This is because a lot of airlines actually give discounted rates to these third-party websites. That way they can sell off any rooms or seats available that they may not be able to sell themselves. Now, offering a cheaper ticket is definitely an advantage, but however, it does come with its disadvantages, which I will mention in my third topic on booking directly through the airline. And then the airline search engine websites that I hear a lot of travelers use and soccer players is Skyscanner, Momondo, and Google Flights. Now, there are other search engine websites that you can use as well that are out there. However, these are the most common websites that I hear whenever I talk to other people. The third way that you can book a cheap flight to Europe is actually booking directly through the airline's website. Now, I know this sounds kind of counterintuitive, but at times, airlines will actually have special discounts or promotions on their websites that third-party airline search engine websites can't sell. So this is another great way to actually catch a cheap flight to Europe is through the company directly. What you can also do as well is if you find any cheap ticket online, you can usually call a customer service representative from the airline and ask if they will price match any ticket that you see available from another company or a third-party website. Usually, sometimes they will do this, but however, they may not, so just take that into consideration. And from a personal experience, I actually like to book with the airline directly through their website or with a customer service representative. This is because if, for instance, your flight were to get delayed and that you miss your connecting flight, or there were to be any other sort of problems that you run into, you can go directly into the airport and talk with a representative from that airline. So that way they can resolve any issues that you may have. With the airline search engine website, if you were to use and book through them, the hard part about this is that there's no physical representative at the airport that you can talk to. So if anything were to actually happen in terms of like missing your flight, having your flight delayed, or missing the connecting flight, you usually can't talk to the agent at the front desk that represents the airline. This is because you booked through a third-party company and you are now subject to terms and conditions through the website and not to the airline. And so you can see how this is a problem. If you were to book through the airline directly, they can help you out right then and there and you can talk to an actual person. If you were to use any of these other search engine websites, you would then actually have to call someone and speak to a customer service representative to actually get those things fixed. And then you can see how this is an even bigger problem if you're overseas and now you have to use your international phone plan in order to talk to a customer service representative. So like I said, for me personally, I like to book directly through the airline. That way, if any issues were to come up, it's a lot easier to rebook and have any problems that I have worked out. And then the fourth way that you can find a cheap flight to Europe is to actually book in advance. A lot of this is due to supply and demand. However, I have noticed that the farther you book out from your departure date, the better price you're going to get. This is partially due to the fact that when airlines have tickets or seats available, they want to sell them as quickly as possible. That way, they're guaranteed that they're making revenue for that flight. So when they offer a seat or ticket very early, what they will do to incentivize people to purchase tickets early is actually give them a discounted rate or offer a lower price. And as you can tell, not a lot of people actually book in advance. They usually book a lot closer to their departure date. So as you can see, that's why airlines incentivize people to purchase their flights early. That way you get a better price. As a general rule of thumb, if you were to purchase at the very latest a month before your departure date on an international flight, I've noticed that you get a pretty good price for your ticket. So I would book either a month or earlier in advance before your departure date. As you get closer to your departure date, I have heard that you can also find a really good price on the ticket. However, I wouldn't recommend doing this, and from my own personal experience, I've never found a situation where booking last minute actually gets you a better price. For me, it would be best to book in advance. That way you give yourself much more time to arrange any other transportation or accommodation that you may need once you fly. And to be quite frank, if you're going out to go on trial with a soccer team or you're going to go knock on doors, the last thing that you need to be worried about is your flight. You need to have that set up in advance. That way you're relaxed and you're focused on the task at hand, and that is to perform well during your trial. And the last and final way that you can get a cheap flight to Europe is actually when I first traveled to Sweden. And this, guys, is my secret tip that I'm about to reveal. So how was I able to get 50% off my flight to Europe? Well, when I first flew to Europe, I flew with SAS, which is Scandinavian Airlines. And when you fly with SAS, you're allowed to, if you're under the age of 26, to purchase a youth ticket when you fly with them. The advantage to flying with SAS is that you can purchase a youth ticket. A youth ticket actually gives you a discounted rate in order for young people to fly. I'm not actually sure why they do this because airlines in the US don't offer this. But if you meet the requirements and you purchase your ticket through SAS on a youth ticket, you are able to actually get a discounted rate on your ticket. And when you go to the homepage of their website, you will see a section where you can input all of your travel information. And just below that section, you'll see a tab where it says Book Youth Ticket, and with an arrow to the right of that. This is where you can book flights cheaply if you fall under the 26-year-old age limit. And so when I went over to Stockholm, Sweden the second time, I was actually able to get 50% off the price of my ticket. And then depending on where you're traveling and the dates in which you are traveling, you could actually get a better deal. However, the one thing that you guys should be aware of when you purchase a youth ticket is that there are some restrictions. with youth tickets, there are only so many available for each flight and then also for each day. But even with these restrictions, I was able to make it work and book far enough in advance, that way everything was taken care of. So even with these restrictions, everything was able to work out. So just keep that in mind, because not every day you're going to be able to purchase a youth ticket, and not on every flight you're going to be able to purchase one either. And so that wraps it up for today's video, guys, on how you can purchase a cheap flight to get over to Europe. So like I said, whether you're knocking on doors like I did in Sweden and you're purchasing a youth ticket, or you're going over on trial with a team that you've already set something up with, or even going on a European showcase, these are some ways in which you can get a cheap flight to Europe. So as always, guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That way you can check out a lot more tips and tricks that I have for you guys here in the future, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you, guys.